Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Accountants Club podcast. I'm joined today by Donna Barnes. Donna is an executive, career and leadership coach and runs the Accountants Recruiter. And you've been around the accounting sector for a long time, Donna. So do you want to maybe give a little bit of your background and let us know how you've ended up doing what you do today?
Of course. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the introduction. So as you said, I'm Donna Barnes, and I am an executive coach and mentor and strategist in regards to the accountancy sector. Having started in recruitment over 30 years ago, within generic recruitment, I have most recently sector specific specialised within the accountancy, and that is where I find myself today. So all knowledge on accountants and specifically accountancy practices. So that's where my niche is.
Great. What was it that made you want to specialise in accountancy? Because if you started off sort of generically, what was it that kind of niched you down into accountancy?
I've run my own company now for sort of 13, 14 years, and I had a very generic recruitment agency, and I found that I wanted to do a much more specialist service. And I looked at the professions that we could go down. And to be honest with you, I'm going to be really honest, accountants are recession proof for a start. So as a business owner, that was a really good sector to specialise in. And also I was introduced to Heather Townsend, who is a specialist in the sector. And we got discussing and talking, and she imparted every bit of knowledge that she had on me. So I was then, it was an easy move into the sector for what we now do.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. That's it's useful context. So there's 100 different directions we could go with this conversation, but let's start with something that I think is quite topical at the moment. So there's been, over the last year or year and a half, there's been a lot of talk about the Great Resignation, people kind of walking away from careers that or jobs that they've done for a long time. It feels to me like the tide is turning a little bit on that one, and there's a lot more people now returning to either careers that they had in the past or just returning to the job market because of the economic environment. Is that something that you're seeing? And if so, what is it you're noticing about it?
Yeah, most definitely. We had seen people that were trying to come out of the sector, and specifically in certain sectors, or specialist areas of the sector. But what we're seeing now is you're right, the tide is turning. So we're seeing a lot more candidates being open to discussion. So we do a lot of headhunting. And what we were finding is that we were trying to contact, my team and I probably try and contact over 100, 200 people a day. And we just were not getting the responses that we are used to. But we're beginning to see that slowly come through. But what we're finding is they are being more specific about what they are looking to return into. Right, so their requirements are quite specific. So whether that be, I only want to do this area of the accountancy, I don't want to do X or Y, or I want a fully hybrid role. Or actually, what we're seeing is a lot more flexibility. They're wanting much more flexibility within the roles.
Is that making them harder to place, Donna?
No, it's making them easier to place. Okay, right. As long as, and this is where I think the tide needs to turn. It's not at the moment. It's not in sync. So it's not in sync with the employers. So not all of the employers yet have got onto the bandwagon of you need to move your model to ensure that you attract the right talent and keep the right talent as well. It's people who are flexible, as in they're looking for fully remote, quite happy. We're seeing lifestyles change. So we're seeing people that, will work from 7 till 9 in the morning and then have a few hours off and then work into the evening because that suits their lifestyle. So as long as employers move with that, so what I'm finding and my team are finding is that if I've got an employer that is flexible, I can actually get them really good talent.
Right.
And that's and I think that's where the differentials are coming in at the moment.
And in terms of the flexibility, I presume you place into both practice and into industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you noticed a big difference between how practices are willing to be flexible versus how industry's willing to be flexible, or are they both the same? Or because I get a sense that for a lot of the accountants that I speak to, a lot of them have been slower to move towards that kind of model.
They have, and predominantly most of my work is practice. I do industry, but most of my work is practice. Right, and okay. Yes, they're slower, and I'm constantly talking to my clients and trying to educate them, because we work with clients who haven't moved their model, and it is taking much longer to find them, those people. But in saying that, we do have candidates, so it doesn't have to go fully remote, but what I think is you need to have a sense of flexibility in there. Yeah. So there needs to be some flexibility, whether that's within the hours that they work, or whether actually you're allowing them, or you're able to say to them, yeah, a couple of days at home, that's fine. So it doesn't need to be fully remote, but flexibility is the key.
Yeah. What do you think's the what's the main resistance you get from accountants in practice as to the need for flexibility? What are they resisting? Why are they resisting it?
I think initially, A, it's not what they've always done.
Right. Okay.
B, they're concerned about productivity levels.
Yeah.
And C, a lot of them aren't actually set up for remote working. Technology has driven the sector massively, and actually I think technology now mirrors the requirement for remote working, or flexible working. So everything is going cloud-based, and the accountants that are moving in that manner are able to also place and take on the clients and candidates that need it. But I think some practices where they've got bigger teams, they're worried. I think they're worried about culture for a start. How will I manage and ensure that I still have the same work culture that I have when everyone's in the office, when everyone's remote? And that takes a little bit of training and everything else. But there's a lot about culture. There's a lot about their client base. So my client base local, I need local. So that's a little bit of resistance that I'm coming up against. But also, what I'm also hearing on the other end is, actually, yeah, I have got a client base, but my clients don't want to see me anymore. They're quite happy to have this type of conversation with me. They don't want to take time out of their day to come to my office or see me in their office. Yeah. So I think it's all about the leadership styles. I also deal with a lot of smaller organizations, accountancy firms that are just starting to take on their employees. And what I'm finding is they are much more open to remote workers, because then it means that their infrastructure can look very flat, as in, they don't need an office, they don't need all the equipment, they don't. So actually, I think what we'll see is, as the newer ones are beginning to grow, we will see them grow in this method.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and it's consistent with conversations I've had. So I guess extension to the question, the talent shortage or the talent gap that exists, again, it's very topical. I'm probably every other conversation I have with an accountant, that in one form or another, it comes back to the challenge they have around getting the right talent through the door, sourcing that talent in the first place. I guess that's exactly where you sit and where your services kind of marry up. So what is it that you think has caused the talent gap, and what do you think accountants in practice need to do about that in order to be able to retain the right talent, find the right talent, and kind of plug the holes?
Okay, so there's massive amounts in there, if I'm honest with you. So what has caused it? I think there is definitely a talent gap. I don't think the school leavers are coming through at the moment. I don't think they're training, and I think there's been a massive, especially over the last couple of years as well. You know, we're going to see even more over a period of time. We're going to see even more because a lot of them have left the marketplace earlier than they necessarily would have done. So we've seen, I think I heard quite recently this week actually, that massive amounts have left the workplace that wouldn't much earlier than they would have retired, because they've made other decisions. So we've seen a trance of that go, and then couple that with the fact that we're not training and we haven't trained as many as we could do. That is going to cause a discontent at the same. We're also seeing people go into self-employment. So we're seeing a lot of them go into contract work or self-employment work because they think that's how they're going to get their flexibility. So therefore, they've come out of the traditional job market. And if companies are only looking for a traditional solution, they're going to go into that route, and they're going to have a problem there. How can they plug that gap? And also the other thing is I don't believe that a lot of organizations have moved in regards to how salaries have moved. So the companies that are struggling, in my experience, are not necessarily offering the right package. And it's not just all about money, but their expectation levels are too high for the salaries that they're offering. And they're inflexible in their offering. Right.
And what would I know it's difficult because it's I guess dependent on the seniority of the role and the location and all sorts of different factors. But what type of things, other than a competitive salary, what type of things are people who are coming to market now expecting from prospective employers?
The ones that I'm dealing with and my team are dealing with specifically, we're seeing a lot of ambitious accountants coming through. So it's not just about a job anymore. It's about where can I go? Where am I going within the organization? So you need to have that conversation. So it's not just I'm going to go and do that job. So it's about ambition. It's also about the company themselves. So accountants, in my experience, are renowned for looking at the organization and really delving into the background of the organization. So they won't just take it on read that this is a good company. They'll really delve. So if you've not got a good brand out there, you're going to struggle. So your brand recognition is massive. So it's all about your brand. It's not just about salary, but that does help. It's about holidays. They're looking for much more lifestyle improvements. So it's about holidays. It's not. I've never had a candidate ask me about what pension contribution I'm going to get against my other. So it's not about that. But it is. So it has been about holidays, flexible working, and salary. Those are the three questions that we get when we speak to and career progression. Where can I go? And that's the questions that we get asked quite regularly. Right.
So you say that there's a lot of ambitious accountants coming through. They're the ones who are kind of looking for some of these roles, because I know you do career development through your business as well. So as let's put ourselves in the place of somebody who might be listening to this or watching this. What can they do in order to set themselves up successfully for the development of their own career? What would be the 2 or 3 things that you'd advise everybody to do, no matter where they sit in the organization or what level of seniority they're at? What would be the 2 or 3 things that you think everybody should be doing to further their career?
Well, the first thing is make sure that you are ahead of the technology curve or in the technology curve. So make sure, because that's the main skill that you need, is the computer literacy and packages. So if your current employer is able to, or even if they're not able to give you exposure, go and get the exposure yourself. It's so easy to do courses nowadays. So even if your current company doesn't use it, so keep up to date with the packages, because that's the main thing. When we go to clients, they're not up to date with packages. That's your first thing. So make sure you're up to date with packages. The next thing is if there are any small projects going on in your accountancy company that you can get involved with, then do so. Whether that be the implementation of new technology, the training of some juniors, or just taking on some other responsibility than the traditional work that you do that. What's the third? What would be the third thing? But those are the two most important things. Technology is massive. And it's just keeping yourself your professional development, keep it updated. Don't die with it, because that's the key. And when there's progression, just keep, obviously, if you're ambitious, you're going to do this anyway. Just keep pushing for it, because, and the other thing is at the moment, so traditionally, CVs, you used to look at a CV. So I've been through years, as I said, I've been in it forever. And I used to look at a CV, and where people had what I call job hopped, initially it was like a no-go, it was a really red flag. Then we went through a phase where if people job hop, they were seen as ambitious. So they were seen as, oh, they're really ambitious. They're, you know, they've done really well, and they've managed to progress through and through and through. It's reverting back now to actually, and especially with accountancy practices, they're really worried about people coming in, staying for a very short space of time, disappearing off either with their clients or, you know, they've put so actually what they're looking for now is stability as well as ambition. So can you show career development within a certain organization? So when you're looking for another role, whether that, you know, within your time scale, think, can I get this progression with the role that I'm currently in? People think they need to go and get new job roles or salary increases with another company, and they haven't necessarily had the conversation with their current employer. And I always tell them to do that first.
No, that's good advice. I'm really interested in one of the points you made there around seeking skills outside of the kind of core discipline of accountancy, because again, very topical. It's been talked about a lot in the kind of trade press, but there's a lot of discussion around advisory services or added value services being delivered through the accountants. And I'd be really interested in your view on what, you know, when you're sitting down with a client and they're talking to you about the role that they want to recruit for, what requirements, what asks, what skills are they looking for outside of being able to, you know, manage the kind of core compliance work? What else are employers now looking for?
It's interesting, because what I'm beginning to see are different accountancy practices sectoring off into like more of the advisory side. So it is very specific now. So we've got statutory, where you're literally, you know, that's what your practice is doing, and or you're doing the advisory. So whether that be like your cash flow analysis, your budgetary requirements, your management accounts, and much. So what I'm being asked for is, ordinarily you'd have your management accountants and you'd have your stat accountants. I'm beginning to see a crossover where we're seeing, you know, people, especially within the smaller practices, they're looking for somebody that can do a little bit of hands-on stats work, but also do the advisory side with their clients. Outsourcing is becoming really popular. So therefore, and that's a whole new discussion. So what I'm seeing is the outsourcing of the production of the accounts work being done somewhere else, and then the review and the client-facing work being done through the practice. And again, that's a different skill set, because the new age accountants, is what I'm going to call them, their skill set, where their interpersonal skills, their business development skills, their advisory skills, that's very different to your stats accountant. And that's where the new age accountants are coming through.
Are they doing? Are you getting more and more people talking about the soft skills? I would call them. You know, the client engagement. You know, sales, even, dare I say it. I know it's a dirty word for a lot of accountants, but are you getting people asking more and more about those types of things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's much more commercial. The discussions I'm having are much more around commercial with that. But I do, so what, within my recruitment process, I behavior profile. So I behavior profile all my candidates if they get shortlisted with clients, and that will tell us, and that included in that is like how they, you know, not just how they work with other colleagues, but, you know, but how are they externally as well. So yeah, behaviors are a massive now within the recruitment process and what clients are looking for. So much so that sometimes they're even willing to go a little bit lower on the skill set if they've got the right behaviours. And obviously qualifications still come into it, so the training and, you know, all of the necessary qualifications, but the softer skills are definitely being asked for. So whereas before it was can they technically do the job, tick. Now, I mean, we do a triple fit, so can they technically do the job, as in, do they look like it on paper, tick. Are they behavioural wise right for me, my company and my clients, tick. So we do that as well. And then we do the competency tests and the accountancy tests. So actually, can they do what they say they're going to do, tick. So we do all of that to try and ensure that they're the right person. But we are definitely being asked for much more of a behavioural fit now. Right.
Okay. And is it easy to find? Are the people who are coming through now, do they kind of fit that profile? Is there a generational component to that? You know, how has it manifested itself in the talent pool?
I think the talent pool has moved quite well because the generations that are now coming through are of that ilk. They're being trained in practices and they're adapting really well. But don't get me wrong, there are some that come to me and I know that they are just a brilliant back-end stats accountant. That is what they're going to do, and there is still room for them for that skill set within the marketplace and within accountancy practices. It just depends. And what I've also learned, every accountancy practice is different. They all want a different skill set. So where you've got the job titles, that actually means very little. So you've got, you know, semi-senior, got your senior accountant. That doesn't mean anything. Every accountancy practice is different in what they want.
Okay, that's interesting. So I know nobody's got a crystal ball, right? But if you had to make some predictions about what the next maybe 3 or 5 years might hold for the accountancy profession in the context of what you do, how do you think things will unfold?
I think that we will see a lot of the production moving to more outsourced. Right. I see the doing being much more outsourced. It's obviously then because of the computerization of it as well. So I see people reviewing more within the practices, and I see it becoming much more advisory and much more customer focused. So I'm seeing a lot more like cloud CFOs, financial director routes, and I see businesses as well now, even SMEs needing much more business advice through their accountant, and I see the accountants you know, looking to move into that direction to be able to offer that to them, because they're having to look at their you know, their services as well in regards to what they're doing, and I see much more of a hunger for that than I ever have done. So I think skills wise we're going to be looking much more advisory. The stats are always going to be there. You know, your tax advisors are always going to be there, the auditors are always going to be needed, and that's going to be generic. But I see the small accountancy practices really adding much more value in that sense, and I see the candidate base coming through. So the generations that are coming through, they're you know, the entrepreneurs. We're in the age of entrepreneurs. So you know, why can we not have the entrepreneurs within the accountancy sector? And then I see that coming through as well.
Yeah, I've had a few conversations about this actually, and it almost, they all link together, don't they? Because you talk about the computerization and the technology that is fundamentally there to drive efficiency through the practice. So the question is now, I think, is if you automate as much as you can in terms of the sort of compliance type work, if you automate as much of that as you can, and you free up efficiencies within the practice, how do you deploy those efficiencies? Do you then go and get more compliance customers, or do you add advisory solutions to the ones that you already have and become have a much more intimate relationship with each of your clients rather than go out and get more and more compliance work? So that's certainly ties up with what I've seen. In terms of the future, so if we're going to go down the route of compliance work and computerization and so on and so forth, what do you think accountants need to be doing now to prepare for that world that they aren't doing, in terms of your observations?
Good question. I think they need to be more open to change. What I've found within the sector is they're ordinarily behind the curve. Mm-hmm. So whereas they're not market, they don't change the future, they're always behind it, and it's very different. So what they need to do is, it's all about mindset, and I think we will see this with the newer accountants coming through and taking over the practices and managing practices. If there was any advice, I would it's constantly strive to look for new ways of working and move forward and embrace it, rather than do it because you have to. Yeah. And that's what I'm seeing at the moment. Okay. And
this is a question that it doesn't relate to how the conversation's evolved, but I'm very interested in this, because I see a lot of people talking about the fact that the remote working has driven recruitment in a different way and salaries in a different way. So what I mean by that is, you can hire somebody in. So my wife, for example, she works for a company in San Francisco, but we're based in the north of England. You don't have to hire in your local town anymore, or in the next town over. So somebody in Wolverhampton can employ somebody in Glasgow and vice versa. Is that happening? Are accountants doing that now?
Yeah, they're beginning to, and already. So I was having this conversation with a client yesterday. So I do a lot of advisory work with my clients, so they don't just come to me and get a job and I tick it, go fill it, and off I go. So I was doing some work with him about salaries around his current staff, and we were going through them all. He was London based, right. So fortunately he was okay, because we discussed where his salary levels were, and he always wants to be at the top end of the bracket, so that's fine. And I said to him, you're really fortunate because you can do that, because actually you're being able to charge your clients those fees because they're London clients, so they're happy to pay. What the struggle is so I'm based in Plymouth, and that's where I am, and I recruit all over the UK. So I've got clients in Plymouth who historically were able to pay the lower level salaries because that's what the candidate market was, and it's fine. Those candidates now have choices of being able to work for my London company, because actually they're not fussed where they are. They're not, so if they're happy with remote, so therefore the salaries are being driven up all over, and it's having a real effect. But my Plymouth clients, so my Plymouth accountancy firms, can't charge their clients the London charge rates. So, but their staffing require or are looking for those pay rates, and there is a real discord in what is happening, and we're definitely. So tomorrow I've got an interview with a candidate that's based in Wales, and the client's based in Scotland. Right. It's just and actually the salary levels are beginning to. So where we used to have geographical differences, those boundary lines are really blurring now. Blurring.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, obviously I work for Iris, and we're a software company, and the same, I think the same is true of, you don't have to have an engineer or a developer in the office anymore. They could be anywhere in the world, but certainly anywhere in the country. So it isn't just accountancy that's impacted by that. I think it's affecting most businesses as well. Donna, this has been fascinating. I'm sure we could probably spend another 35 minutes or so on this topic. But if anybody wants to get in touch with you or find out a little bit more about what it is that you do, how can they do that?
So the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. And if you search the Accountants Recruiter, and that's where you'll find me. So Donna Barnes at the Accountants Recruiter, or just have a look on the website, and all my contact details there. My email is donna@theaccountantsrecruiter.co.uk. Really simple. But yeah, LinkedIn or through my email. Always welcome to have conversations. Love talking about accountancy, love talking about recruitment and behaviour profiling.
Perfect. Donna, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again sometime soon.
My pleasure. Lovely to speak to you, Tim. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.